Shannon Foreman is a multi-passionate leader, visionary, and changemaker. As CEO and founder of two companies, Forethought Planning, which is a wealth management firm, as well as Shannon Foreman Co., a boutique coaching and consulting agency, she is passionate about partnering with individuals to help them create the life they desire. Building community and creating positive change is at the cornerstone of both of her businesses. Shannon actively seeks out opportunities to bring people together, and we are so lucky to have this badass financial planner with us today. Let's welcome Shannon.
Well, I'm just so happy you're here because we know how hard it is in this stage of life to think about finances for our own lives while our kids are like running around and we're thinking about daycare costs. And then when our parents come into the picture and we learn what their financial situation is, oh, why not throw another brick on our shoulders? Let's just dig into their finances
Log
and
in the
figure out what they
fire.
don't have. Yeah, exactly. So I'm so happy you're here because I know our listeners have a lot of questions and are trying to navigate what it's like to actually navigate their parents' finances or start to, or learning their parents maybe have nothing, or maybe they actually have a fortune that they're hiding under their mattress. No idea. But I feel like we've come to the right place to ask all the questions. So we're just going to dive in.
Can you say again the part that you said before about financial planning?
Yes,
and how it's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think there's this element that a lot of folks think, and they get into these spaces around caregiving. And so many people worry about market fluctuation when it comes to their financial plan. But the largest impact is a caregiving experience, especially for the individual that's receiving the care. That is the place that actually impacts your financial plan more than market
Yeah.
fluctuation.
So you mean kind of like towards the end of life, as you're
Yeah.
needing cares, the
Yeah.
cost of those cares and how much you have or have not planned for that time in life impacts your quality of life, impacts the cares you might receive, impacts your life and finances more than just paying attention to the stock market for all the years.
Yeah, so if you think about it, right, like you have, we'll just say 40 plus years of investing. Now, some people start later in life and some people start earlier. So you have this span of time, maybe even we'll call it 50 years, where you're investing. Well, so many people are seeing the cost of care increase, right? There's this little word that we became very familiar with in 2021. It's called inflation. And no one experienced it for about 12 years. So our generation is like, whoa, what is this like super crazy increase in cost of living? Well, that's inflation. And the cost of care, or the inflation of the cost of care, is actually even more on an annual basis than your toilet paper and groceries, right?
Got it. Yep.
So it's growing at about 6.5%. And the average cost of care in the state of Minnesota, which is where we all are, is between $80,000 and $100,000 a year. And
Absolutely.
the average
Which we know is real. We're
Yep, so real.
experiencing that
we all
ourselves.
know that, right? With the average stay for a female is 3 years in a facility, but that doesn't count all of the caregiving before they get to that facility. For guys, it's a little different. Maybe they're a little less stubborn than us women and don't want to stick around. I mean, that's what I joke with clients. Their average stay is
Interesting.
2 years in a facility, which when I look at my caregiving experiences, so I'm a sandwich caregiver 3 times over.
Wow.
I started my sandwich caregiving experience at 28 years old. I don't know about you guys, but nobody else
That's
looks like
young.
us,
Yeah,
right?
I know.
When you
I
go
know.
to like
That's
to a
why we're
caregiving
here.
circle,
Yeah.
Tell
you're
us
like,
more about that.
whoa. My oldest was 18 months and my youngest was in utero as pregnant.
Yeah.
And when you asked me about funny caregiving stories, I was caregiving for my grandfather, and I was walking in Target to buy Depends, and I'm like 9.5 months pregnant, and I run into my old boss while I'm carrying a bunch of Depends, and she's like, "Are those for you?" Like, have you just given up? Like, no, they are for my grandfather. I'm not quite peeing my pants yet. Jeez.
Not quite yet,
We got
but
other things in between, like peeing your pants and depends for
But a
us
fair
ladies.
question. A fair question.
I mean, and she was laughing, and it was a great moment because my grandfather was at his end of life, right? Like these were the last Depends I was buying because he was on hospice care. And so, like, I remember my toddler running around, and then I gave birth like 30 days after he passed away.
Wow.
girl, we feel you.
Oh my God.
We have
Yeah.
both lived very similar stories,
Yeah.
more with our parents and our grandparents in our case, but it is so real. And we joke on this podcast that we're buying diapers and Depends in the same shopping trip all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Queuing up your Amazon cart for
Yeah.
wipes for both generations. Like, it's like
Correct.
very, very real. Yeah.
Very real. Because we're buying all the wipes and the diapers
Absolutely.
for everybody, just in case you're
Speaking
wondering.
of finances,
I'm
that
sure-
shit is not covered.
Yeah, you guys
Yeah.
listening
Yeah.
can relate to all
Yeah.
the diapers you've been buying. Okay, so let's back up a little bit because you've got so much good stuff to share. If you still have parents that are in a good place, can you
Yes.
think about having the conversations? But if you run into a spot where you can see one of your parents is declining or there's something that's come up, how do you even start to have the conversation of like, yo, I don't know if you should be managing your bank account by yourself. And what
Yeah.
do you have in your bank account?
I said I was a sandwich caregiver 3 times over. So my caregiving journey started with my grandfather. After my grandfather passed away, about 6 months after that, my dad was diagnosed with early onset dementia at the age of 64. And that was an 8.5 year battle. He passed away almost 2 years ago. And then I was a caregiver for my grandmother at the end of her life. She passed away a year ago. So varying different experiences through those three, caregiving experiences for myself. But I've also, from a professional standpoint, walked hundreds of clients through these scenarios around caregiving and what it has been over my last 20 years in the financial services industry. The conversation is the hardest part. Right? Because there's loads of feelings and you have different people coming to the scenario with different money stories. So you have an older generation where money was private. They didn't talk about it, right? I'm not going to share it with you. If I share it with you, then are you going to take my money from me? This very mistrusting element, even with your kids that you absolutely love and adore, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I sat down with clients and they've been like, don't tell my kids anything. And I'm like, well, of course I'm not going to tell your kids anything. Like, this is our relationship. But that becomes, how do I talk to my parents about what it is that's happening to them?
Yeah.
Because at some age, I think that that's where the conversation has to be really centered around the human that you're caregiving for, because they are still a human and they worked really hard to get to the place that they are. And now, we joke about diapers and wipes, but none of us are like super excited to have somebody else wipe our asses,
No.
right?
Mm-mm.
No.
And
Not excited about
how
that.
and how many layers of humiliation come with the physical medical part of someone caregiving for you, but also the financial elements of things. And so when you start those conversations, they have to be very human centered. So, like, what are your wishes? What's important to you? What do you want your legacy to look like? When do you want us to step in and help? What does that look like for you? Having all of those conversations come back. Now, if you're in this oh shit moment and it's already happening, like, you have to make sure that you have the right legal documents in order, because if you don't have the right legal documents in order, you're not going to be able to do anything. And you got to make sure that they're cognitively aware enough to sign a legal document to give you the rights. So don't wait too long to do that.
So we're gonna get to that, but I wanted to go back to something I think that you were really trying to say is like money is so much about control and about like a person's sense of self and pride. And I love how you're like, saying a good way to start the conversation is inviting the person into the conversation rather than,
Yes.
I feel like most of us are like, okay, we need to talk about your finances, Dad. Like we need to figure this out
Yeah.
because this is
Where's
not
your bill
good.
pay? Where
Yeah.
are your
Yeah.
passwords? What do you got in the accounts, right? And that those are all the strategy, but you have to come and recognize like, wow, you've worked so hard for what it is that you have. You can think about how you would want your kids to talk to you too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want my girls coming in and being like, yo, where are the passwords at, homie?
Yeah.
I need to get in. And I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, 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 Juliana and Savannah. I worked real hard for this ish. You not just go get a username and password and like be able to do whatever you want to with it, right?
Yeah, and I know I think about my dad a lot in this scenario because he was giving up everything. I mean, my dad
Mhm.
overnight, it was like he couldn't drive. And his
Yeah.
biggest concern with the money, which I've mentioned this before, is he just wanted to make sure that he could get Chinese buffet and nobody was going to get in his way. He's like, he was so afraid that if he let me be power of attorney or turned over any money to me, that he wouldn't be able to get his Yangtze
Yeah.
buffet. And I'm like, you're
Which
going to get
is
your buffet.
Delicious. That's what
which
it is. It's delicious.
which if you target the conversation around them and less about the strategy and like the practicality of things, then those things will come easier secondarily. But like now you know that Chinese buffet is really important to dad, so you can say, "All right, dad, we've got all of these things taken care of for you, and this is how much you have for Chinese buffet."
I
Right?
love
Love
that.
that. So going back to the comment you made about like make sure you have the right forms in order so you in an emergency situation someone can step in. We had another guest on the podcast, Rachel Schroman of Schroman Law, and
Do you
we
know her?
really focused on power of attorney, also healthcare directives and stuff like that. But is the power of attorney paperwork the most important piece of paperwork for the financial side of things, or are there other documents that we should be getting?
So, power of attorney is the absolute most important. You won't be able to make any financial decisions without a power of attorney. I even tell spouses this, like if one of you is incapacitated, just because you're both on the account doesn't mean I can't make decisions. Or just because I've been working with you for 20 years and your husband's IRA and you're making decisions on, like, no, I have to have this legal document. I love y'all, but I'm not losing my practice over you not
Yeah,
having the right legal
Of
documents in
course, yeah.
play, right? And that's my CYA for them, right? Like, I want to make sure that you're well taken care of and people are making the right decisions on your behalf. So we need to have those legal documents in order. I would also say that, for me, I ask clients, would you like to have, your kids in for a family meeting? Not a, here's all of the assets, here's how we invest everything, but so they know they're meeting me before. I don't want to meet kids for the first time at a funeral.
Mm-hmm.
that's great
I don't
advice.
want to meet, I don't want to meet kids for the first time when stuff's going down. I want there to be an existing relationship, a friendly face, a person that they know that they can come to and help walk them through everything. And so like my clients' kids know Shannon's the first person that I'm going to call because
Mm,
she's going to lead me in the right direction to
mm,
I
where
love
everything is
that.
going, right?
mm-hmm.
I love that so much.
And that's how I run my practice. That's how I've always looked at things is money and health are so important and so intertwined, and they're personal, and you have to have almost like the bedside manner for health. You have to have that with money too, because it is personal. And you also are having a clash of generations when it comes to the practicality of things. I mean, my mom still goes into the bank and makes her mortgage payment.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have an automatic payment. Like,
Mm-hmm.
good God, mother, I love you, but
I still write checks, so I mean,
My dad
I'm with
can't
her.
access the banking app, which has
yeah.
come in
Oh yeah, the banking app
very
is a whole
handy,
thing.
actually.
Oh yeah, yeah, for
But
us.
then he calls us 3 times a day, me and my sister. Can you get my balances? Can you get my balances? Can you get my balances?
Yeah.
Pluses and
I
minuses. Yeah.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, over communication is better than no communication sometimes, but it does provide a level of stress in any conversation when it comes to money. in that caregiving space, it just is, it's layered, right? Because there's the practical side of things, and then there becomes, how am I initiating the care? And what does that care cost look like? And what is covered? And there are many situations out there where people are like, I want to hide all of my assets so that I can get free care. And the reality is, there isn't free care
No, there's
in our
not.
country.
I am here to tell you that yes, that is a correct statement if I've ever heard one.
And
And
we,
Medicaid isn't free.
okay, so yeah,
Hold on,
go
can I
ahead.
just stop us there
Yeah.
because I think this is one of the most important things. Like, I mean, I could get really emotional when we talk about like the finances of my parents because we lived in a small town. They didn't have super high paying jobs. We always had enough, and they really tried to financial plan the best that they could, the best that they were advised, the best that they knew how. But at the end of the day, they were also of a generation who really felt like the government's going to take care of you and Social Security is going to be enough. And
Yeah.
that has been one of the hardest narratives to navigate because in their mind,
Yeah.
their life as it is now was going to be so much more glamorous than the reality of what it is. My parents are both on medical assistance. Their money ran out very quickly because of health events and the cost that we're talking about, the rising cost of assisted living facilities and communities. And it's shocking. I mean, their financial loss has been one of the hardest for them to navigate and the hardest for us to see, even beyond their physical health, because it's taken away a lot of the freedoms that they thought that they would have at this time. My parents actually don't have enough money to go to the China buffet all the time. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
is a super luxury for them. And we'll get into medical assistance because I think that's a really important conversation to have. But the idea that the government is just going to care for you, that the government's going to provide for you, that Social Security is enough is not the reality in 2025. Maybe that's how it was for their parents, but that's not true today.
Yeah. And I thank you for sharing that because I know
Oh, it's tough.
there's
It's
nothing
really tough.
that makes me more emotional than money. Shannon knows this, and I agree with you. I think you said so many true things when you were telling that story, and I feel like the financial stress and loss for my parents also when I finally peeled back the curtain and realized what they did not have, and there was no plan.
Yeah.
So it's like all these like generational differences. And when people are like, this is it, these are their assets. Yes, these are assets
Yeah.
that we're working with. This is the finite amount of money that we're working with. And I think nothing has been more emotional than the
Yeah.
money piece of this. And nothing has felt more shocking and disorienting than the
Yeah.
financial piece. I want to come back to some of the more practical terms that we're talking about so we can sort of break it down for people that are new to all of this.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about long-term health and long-term
Like
care
long-term care.
insurance. Yeah, long-term care. So my parents, just to give you guys a sense who's listening, my mom qualified and I think she was like 60. She actually signed up for long-term care through like a broker. My dad did not
And this is an
qualify.
insurance, correct?
It's an insurance.
Yeah.
So it's like the idea that this is insurance that that you pay into and it will kick in when you need to be like covered with if you're moving into assisted living or home care or whatever.
Yeah, there's lots of different types of long-term care insurance, and you're gonna run into different types. So how I explain it is, there's long-term care insurance that works like car insurance, where if you never use it, you lose it. And then there's long-term care insurance that you can pay into, and has death benefits associated with it, and has different levers of investment options within those policies as well, and that uses life insurance as parts of that, so that there is something left over for a family member, or if they never used it and peacefully passed away in their sleep, their family still gets something. However, with these types of policies, there's triggers. And some policies will cover in-home care, adult daycare, assisted living, nursing home care, memory care, and some have restrictions on that. Most of these policies, you have to not be able to do two activities of daily living. And how I explain that is how you get out of bed. So transferring, getting in and out of bed, showering, putting your clothes on, eating, toileting, and controlling your bladder. Those are the 6 activities of daily living. If you cannot do any of those two, then the policies usually kick in. Usually there's a waiting period though. So it might kick in, but you still have to cover costs for a period of time before that insurance kicks in. And not everybody believes in long-term care. Some people believe in self-insurance and covering that on their own. The thing that self-insurance can't always do is cover that inflationary increase, especially when you're not investing in things that will, yield something higher for you.
And we should note that a lot of people, like you said, don't have long-term care. I remember my mom talking about how she had signed up with somebody, but how do people know if their parents have it? And how do they
Yeah, I think
start
that becomes
accessing
a
it?
conversation of, okay, so if you were ever to need care, what do you want that care to look like? What assets have you set aside to cover that cost of care? Do you have any insurance policies? Do you have investments? Do you have CDs? Do you have cash? What does that look like, right? Asking a lot of the why questions versus like a pointed question. Because if they work with someone like myself, they might have another plan in place to get to that same goal, or they might not. In all reality, because not every financial advisor also talks about long-term care insurance or caregiving.
Hmm.
We have to talk about also about how our industry has changed from, our parents to now our generation. Our parents went to a financial advisor to trade stocks.
Hmm.
They didn't necessarily go there for full comprehensive financial planning like we all seek. And the industry has completely evolved to be, more inclusive of those things. So if you just ask, like, do you have a financial advisor? Your parents in reality might have a financial advisor that has their investment portfolio, but they might have an insurance agent that helped them with life insurance or
Yeah.
long-term care
Yeah.
insurance, right?
Okay, so let's say they don't have it. And
Mhm.
you talked about Medicare and Medicaid, which I'm still mixing up. I still interchange them. And I'm like, damn it. I am like 4 years into this. I should fucking know.
They're like
No,
the
Can
same
you,
word though, so it's very
they
confusing.
are
Yeah.
like, they
it
should
is.
rebrand that shit. Can you talk about
Well,
Medicare
they're
and
trying to
Medicaid?
rebrand a lot of that right now, but we won't get into the political side of things.
So true.
Yeah. Okay. So can you talk about Medicare and Medicaid and, they sound similar, but how are they different? Can you break it down a little bit?
Yeah, so Medicare is your general like health insurance coverage in retirement. And a lot of people think, oh, Medicare will cover me for long-term care. No, it will not. It actually only pays up to 110 days in the hospital. So you need to be able to plan. After that 110 days, you are on your own.
And that's terrifying. Can I just stop us there and say that my dad was in the ICU for a very long time? This is now like a couple of years ago, but he almost hit that 110-day limit. Like I think we were at day 102.
Mhm.
And I learned that there is a limit. And I was terrified because he was progressing. I was like, I think we're going to make it out of here finally. 100 days in ICU is a long time, you
It's a
guys.
long time.
100 days in the hospital is an insane amount of time. And so the hospitals aren't anticipating a stay that long. Insurance isn't ever anticipating covering someone that long, but I had no idea that there was a limit. And then
Yeah.
someone on the phone was like, oh, well, that he's almost to his limit. And I was like, excuse me, what?
Yeah.
And so I was scared that, I mean, what were we going to do? Because if I remember correctly, then there was like a period of time that he had to remain out of the hospital
Mhm.
before his insurance would kick
Correct.
back in again. Yeah.
So what happened?
We really lucked out. He got out of the hospital in time and was able to stay out of the hospital long enough for that period of time to kick in. I forget if it was 30, 60, or 90 days or something like that, but there was a period where he had to remain home.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have become 100% private pay
Yeah.
and his insurance would not have covered anything. So that, I mean, hitting that limit, I think a lot of people are like, oh, 100 days, there's no way we'd ever make that. I
You
mean,
d-
you
it
can.
happens for it
Yeah, it
happens for
happens.
more people than you think. And
Hmm.
um, there's also like Medicare, there's different parts of it, and that's why it can get so complex. It's like the alphabet soup. There's, Medicare Part A, Part B, there's Part C, there's Part D. There's all these different supplemental plans that come into play. And so it gets really complex at that stage of planning. You you have one that covers your prescription drugs, you have one that covers hospital, you have one that covers regular doctor care, you have to have certain specialists. Like it gets so complex. I say this all the time. Our societal structures as an ecosystem are designed to be complex to keep people where they are. It is a structural power grab. If we think about the financial structure, medical structure, legal structure, government, education, all of them are so complex to navigate that it keeps people where they are. So that's why I'm always like, I'm gonna ask more questions. I'm gonna learn more things. I'm gonna be curious to
Yeah.
understand and learn. I never thought I'd be sitting in this chair, let alone own my own financial firm and have a team that's doing all this work every single day. If you would ask 19-year-old Shannon that, she would have spit her water out in your face. In fact, I did that with my professor that suggested I be in wealth management. But this is where we have to empower ourselves. Yes, it isn't as fun as scrolling Pinterest and looking at beautiful things for your house. But the beautiful things for your house you can't have unless you know how systems work, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to understand some of those things. And the Medicare part of it is really just to cover that, you know, some of that oh shit money and then your day-to-day expenses. Medicaid is saying, okay, you have certain income qualifications. Basically, you don't make enough money to be able to pay anything, and you don't have enough assets to pay for it. And in order to qualify for Medicaid, you have to have what's called a spend down period of time. So you spend down your assets. In the state of Minnesota, it is $3,000 to your name, one house, one car. But what people don't realize is they also put a lien on that house to repay all of your medical expenses that you've had. So, yes, you can have that house, but that house will, dissipate in value based on what you've accessed from Medicaid. Medicaid also, like very complex, but you won't qualify if you make too much money too. So a lot of people think like, I'll just spend down all of my assets and I'll qualify for Medicaid. And the reality is you might still make too much money if you have a pension, if you have annuity income, if you have Social Security, right? You still might make too much money to qualify in that space.
So,
oh yeah, I know.
but
We're like,
so many
yes.
questions.
Yeah.
So to recap, Medicare is for people who are in retirement. Is that
Yes.
65 and older?
Yes.
And Medicaid can support lower incomes at any age,
Correct.
correct? Okay. And
Yeah.
sometimes both?
Um, so yes, Medicaid is used for individuals 65 and older who don't have income qualifications. Basically, it is just an income qualification for healthcare.
But
Yep.
I'm glad you brought up the spend down, because we hear this a lot. And when we get into the space, people are like, well, you got to spend down. I remember my relatives talking to me about that. Or you've got like people hiding their money, gifting it to their children so that it looks like on paper they don't have.
There's a
Yes.
5-year look back period too. So if you're going to start gifting, you need to understand not to spend those assets that have been given to you because the the government's going to look back 5 years and it's going to say, well, you had these assets for 5 years and you gifted them. Where they at? You're responsible for them.
Yep. So if you, like, let's just say, for example, that you have a house, and if you sold that house to, let's say, a family member,
Hmm.
and then you went on medical assistance or qualified for Medicaid 3 years into after that sale, the government could technically look at that sale of that house because it hasn't been the full 5 years yet and say, hey, this is actually a large asset that you own. We're going to have that now, or we're going to put the lien on that now. Correct?
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
has to fully be past that 5-year clawback for the government to not
There's
dig
some
into
ways that you
things.
can get around that with like the proper, Medicaid, Medicare, Medicaid planning, spend down planning attorneys. So I have some friends that very specifically work in that space,
Whoa,
who
wait,
do Medicaid.
hold
I know.
on.
I'm like, what?
Hold
What'd you
on.
just say?
So there
Yeah,
are
so
financial planners
well,
that
elder care
Specifying.
attorneys.
oh.
This is a Rachel question.
I love that. I love that
We gotta have
reaction.
Rachel back on for the
Uh,
spend down talk. Okay.
Okay.
yes, being qualified in that space, to understand the Medicaid process and what you need to do and how you need to spend that
So
down.
is Medicaid and medical assistance, are those the same thing?
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
Okay. This is like a good transition to get. I know you guys, this is not sexy stuff, but hopefully you're listening because you need to know this stuff. It is not sexy.
This is an invaluable
But it is,
conversation. Can I just
I'm
say?
learning
This
a
is
lot.
so
I'm
good.
like,
Yeah.
Okay. So can we transition into the elderly waiver? Because I feel like they're kind of connected here.
So let me
Yes.
stop before we
Oh,
actually
yeah.
dive in. My parents, because so much of this conversation is what I am living
Me
with
too.
my parents.
Me too.
So my parents did financial plan. They thought they had enough. Again, they relied on the government or thought that the government would take care of them, which I guess it technically is, but it's not the, life that they thought that they'd be having at this point. We got them on medical assistance, which we knew that their money wasn't going to last forever. And that was a silver lining in conversations that we had leading up to them moving into assisted living, is that we knew, yeah, it wasn't going to last forever with the assets that they had.
It wasn't a
So-
spend down. It was actually, there is nothing.
Well, they had a little something, and that is why I wanted to bring this up in this part of the conversation, because as you're planning caregiving overall, if you're thinking about moving your loved ones into an assisted living community, not everyone accepts medical assistance or Medicaid. So that was one of the first and most important questions that we asked communities when we were looking is, do you accept medical assistance? A lot of places don't. A lot of places are 100% private pay. And if the money runs out, you got to move.
Yep,
Some
we went across
places,
that experience with my grandmother.
yep. Some places only accept like 15 to 20% of their clientele
Or they
on
have
medical
certain
assistance.
rooms and beds that are,
Correct.
like
Sometimes they're
assigned
shared
for that.
rooms. Yeah.
Usually they
Sometimes,
are.
yeah. It's again a very different quality of living. We very much, I think, lucked out with my parents and their assisted living community because it was right after COVID. A lot of people weren't moving their loved ones into assisted living communities, and so my parents have their own apartment. Their community accepts assisted living or accepts medical assistance. And so I feel very grateful that we were able to get them into a community that will work with their financial situation, but then getting them on medical assistance. So we started private pay and then worked our way into medical assistance because frankly, I was doing all the calculations when we moved them. I was like, this money is going to last this long. And then guess what?
It
My
never
that's when my
does.
dad ended up in the hospital. We were not expecting at all his health event to happen. Like that took our family by surprise. We were moving my parents because of my mom's health. And my dad was, still driving. He was working. He was retired, but he loved his part-time job. And then a few months after they had moved, thank God they moved when they did because his health event happened. And frankly, like his bills became so large at assisted living because we were still paying private pay. All those calculations I did, I mean, their money lasted a fraction of the time that I thought it would. And so then it was sort of this hot and heavy race to get them on medical assistance. And let me tell you, that's the thing in this whole journey, getting them on medical assistance is the thing that I think almost killed me. That was the most stressful time of my life. Like it was
It is.
horrible. And so to hear that there are people that are like helping with that is incredible because even in their assisted living community, I see so many people that don't have family. The staff, is really low staffed right now. And they're just trying to get these people help and trying to keep them there. And it's really difficult to see. Um, but it's a really hard process. And I'm sorry, but I think everyone working for the state is like super burned out and jaded
And there are a
Well,
lot of
yeah,
backed up.
for
angels.
sure they
Like,
are.
And there are a lot of angels too.
yes, yes.
I've done that experience 2 times over, so I completely.
Whew.
It is a for those of you that are listening and have never had to go through that experience, it is like opening all of your loved ones' private information and basically having to prove that they don't have anything. And it is a disheartening scenario because you're watching people you love and you care about who worked really hard and just simply don't have enough.
Yeah,
And the reality is that is a lot of Americans.
yeah,
Um, I wish that we would come to a conversation around these topics and be able to really see the humans both on the side of the patient and the caregiving spaces. I remember going in and seeing my dad and nurses and everyone saying like, no one else gets visitors as much as your dad.
yeah.
And it was my mom and I and my kids because I'm an
Hmm.
only child, only grandchild. I didn't have anybody else to plan or do anything with. It was me and my lovely husband who got
Yes.
to go along on the ride with me. But these are serious topics. And as Robin said, like, I get it. They're not sexy. They're not fun. It's more fun to talk about the fluff of life, the weather, Pinterest grid, the funny things that are happening on our algorithms, soccer mom drama, whatever, like Real Housewives, like all that shit is like way more funny to talk about. Whatever great edible we're going to talk about, whatever great wine we're drinking, like whatever it is. I mean, some of that has to happen for us to like
Yeah.
get through the other things,
Cope.
but
Yep.
the reality is it's so much easier to talk about some of that stuff than it is to talk about the hard stuff. And we're experiencing it. Some people's, families just are not taking care of them at all. And it's sad to see.
Yeah.
And even if we are, it's a very heartbreaking thing to talk to your parents about. I mean, I can just relate about telling them what they don't have. And
Yeah.
it's and them trying to wrap their head around what they don't have after they've worked so hard.
So hard.
So
Because
hard.
there's so much pride
I know.
Well,
in that.
And they
I
should be
remember
proud.
I remember I remember sitting at my parents' dining room table and it was my mom, myself, my husband, and my dad and the social worker. And my dad just looks at me and says, like, I wanted to leave you a legacy, right? And that was the hardest part for me is because I knew he meant financial legacy. My dad, talented artist, beautiful art. Like I've inherited all of that. But I had to remind him that it wasn't the financial legacy that he left for me.
Hmm.
It was the legacy of the human that he was. And I was passing that down to my kids and to the rest of the world. And that his legacy was me and my girls as walking, breathing, living legacy. That's not
That's
going to make
beautiful.
up for the financial pieces of things. Did Would the money make it easier on everything? Yes, it would have made it easier. And at the same time, like I've also seen people who have mountains of money and nobody to take care of them,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
right?
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like there's this give and take that we just don't see from people behind the scenes on what they're struggling with and what they're going through and having to process on their own. And your parents are incredibly blessed to have you all as advocates. Robin, I know you so well, and I know how much you advocate for your parents and what you do. You and I've had these conversations. I think the hardest part in the caregiving journey is having to be that advocate and the role switch
Yeah.
of they were our parents and now we have to be the parent and advocate for them. And that's the hard part when it comes to like, well, they were the ones cutting the check for the things, right? And
Yeah.
now we're the ones that are paying the China buffet bill so we can take them out to lunch so that they can feel great. This is why these conversations are so important, and why, when you text me to ask me if I would be on the podcast, it's a hell yes every single time.
Yeah.
Because these conversations need to continue to keep being had so that we understand what can happen and what do we need to do. So how do we also take the experiences that we're having, but how do we make sure that we don't carry this on for our kids and what happens next for us? And this is a transitional problem that's happening in our country. And we really have to, yes, advocate at a state and local and national government level, but it's not the government's full responsibility to pay for care. At least that's not my opinion. But we have to talk about, how do we lower these prices, right?
Yeah,
Why does it
seriously.
cost so goddamn much for a place to live?
Yeah.
And the reality is there are some incredibly glamorous places, but the average American is not going to be in that space. And we can continue to shut out folks of the working class who have worked really hard and now don't have a space to go or don't have the honor of the life that they had, to be able to be treated humanely.
Well, I guess we're doing therapy today, so thank you. Also, I hope if you're listening to this, you are feeling a little less alone if you're going through this, because please know that there is no shame in really trying to understand finances and what's there, what isn't there. And hopefully, if you're listening, there's someone that you can be talking to about it and taking any sort of like shame or guilt or anything out of that conversation and normalizing it, because we're here.
Absolutely.
Telling our stories.
I got us on a tangent though. So let's back up to the care waivers that
Yeah.
you had brought up. Yeah, I know. Sorry. That was like 20 minutes ago now.
Is
But
the
like,
elderly waiver the same as medical assistance?
no.
So Medicaid is the income qualification equivalent of Medicare, right? So it's going to cover all your everyday, your doctors, your hospital, your prescriptions, those types of things, right? What elder waiver is the next level of like, okay, now you need adult daycare, assisted living, home care, nursing home care. That's where the elder waiver comes in, and you have to qualify for Medicaid in order to qualify for the elder waiver.
Okay.
In the state of Minnesota, every state is different.
Correct. Yep, absolutely. All this advice is for the state of Minnesota. Robin and I are not, we are not financial professionals or lawyers. We're not
But
giving.
hopefully it's like foundational information.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Well, it opens the door to ask the questions and be able to do the things, right? Like when you have a nugget of knowledge, that opens the door.
Both of
And-
my parents are on the elderly care waiver, and as I understand it, like medical assistance is a financial part of it, and the care waiver is what covers part of their cares
Yes.
Got it.
by the state. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. This is something that I came across in setting up medical assistance with my parents. First of all, I had to separate their bank accounts because they were individuals in the system now. So we had to really separate their money because I have to prove the spend down, right? When I was setting up the accounts, I initially put myself on as just joint to their account. And then when I was like, oh, I have this power of attorney paperwork, thankfully the banker was like, oh, wait, we need to redo these. We need to put you on the bank account differently as a power of attorney and not as a joint owner. Yeah. Can you speak to why that is?
Well,
quickly?
like just from a legal perspective too, because you're joint owners on something, you 50-50 own that. You could go close that account at any point in time as an owner versus a power of attorney.
Yep. And I also understood it in that specific case as by being power of attorney on their account versus a joint owner, I was also protecting my own assets and my own money
Correct.
from ever being taken into consideration for their medical assistance dollars and their
Correct.
assets. Correct.
Oh, so by
Correct.
you just being power of attorney and not being an owner.
Yeah. So if
Yeah,
I was
you
a
don't wanna
joint
be an
owner on the
owner.
bank account, they could have taken my own personal money into consideration for their assets
Shit,
and
I have
not.
to make some changes
No,
myself.
I know. You got to bring in that power of attorney paperwork. And so it's important to be listed as a power of attorney. And I didn't know that. That was just something that thankfully I just happened to bring up the power of attorney paperwork at the bank, and the specific
Yes.
banker,
Don't-
not even the
don't
one
be
that
an
set it
owner.
up. Yeah. help me change that. Thanks for clarifying that.
We have a couple more questions.
Well, maybe
already.
a question is, you talk about like our generation is sort of doing things differently. What should we be doing for our own futures?
Well, one, you don't have to have $1 million to do a financial plan or work with a financial advisor. Robin, you just brought up like hopefully you have somebody in your life that you can work with on the, shame side of things. We deal with all of the emotional side and the practical strategy side of things. Um, Little plug for us and what we do, but
Absolutely.
that's where we bring both sides of it together because money is emotional. And our generation comes with, okay, how do I stop doing this generational stuff? And how do I carry forward a healthy, whether it's parenting, relationships with our body, money, whatever it might be, boundaries. It's a word my parents would never have used. Um,
We
I
talked
use it
about that
all
in a
the time
previous
in my
episode too. Yeah.
household, right? I just was writing about my caregiving experience and like being able to have boundaries and know that it is not my responsibility to financially care for my previous generation. For instance, when my grandmother was qualifying for the spend down, a family member, to remain nameless, came to me and was like, "Well, you're just going to pay for her." I'm sorry. I will not be paying for her. I have college, I have my own retirement. And their response was, but I have retirement too. And I was like, your lack of planning is not my emergency, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important that you start planning as early as possible for the what ifs in life, that you have the legal documents, that you're saving and investing. And we live in such an instant gratification and a culture that is all about spending and living up with the Joneses and having the nice shit. And the reality is that nice shit isn't going to pay to wipe your ass later in the future. And you've got to be able to plan for all of the things in life. And you can start doing that the earlier that you plan.
I love that because it's so true. Like it's just so true.
And
I don't
I
have a filter. Like
We don't either.
I
okay.
have lived without money. My family was on, food stamps. I know what it's like to have an empty fridge. I also know what it's like to be able to feed every kid in my neighborhood and be charitably giving and be financially successful, right? But I worked hard to get it, and you have to be able to be smart with your money and not make dumb choices just because everybody else is fucking doing it.
Okay, so I'm getting the sense that like if you're in this stage of life, try to talk to a financial planner. Do not be intimidated by thinking you don't have
No.
enough to work with.
Yes.
Go and ask the questions. But I also wanted to ask, is it too late? Let's say we're in a situation like this. I'm in my 40s. My parents are in this situation where I realize they don't have very much. Is it too late to go to a professional? Like, should we be
No.
going to talk to a lawyer? Should we be going to talk to a financial planner? Even when we're in this situation where we're like, okay, we don't have much to work with here. Like, my parents didn't save enough. What do you have to say about that?
I think one, it's not too late for you to start planning for yourself, and the right strategic partner will be there to support you in what are the things that are coming, right? You might be on medical assistance, you might be on elder waiver, but there's still the elements that also come with caregiving and end of life. Because at the end of life, there's still going to be some accounts that you have to be able to transition. If either one of your parents, one passes away before the other, what does that estate planning look like for that other individual? Are they going to be receiving a step up for Social Security? There's planning that goes with the end of, there's a lot of moving parts that happen if both your parents are still alive. Even if you only have one parent that's still alive, there are questions that you want to have a professional there to ask the
So
right
you're
human.
saying it's just never too late to like ask for help.
No,
You're never
no,
just
never
like,
too
we're
late.
screwed. Like,
Yeah, there are resources available. Use the resources for your parents and make sure that you're saving and investing for your future and your kids' future.
Can
So
you name
use
some of
the
those resources?
well, like use Medicaid. Use the
Got it.
spend down, right? Like be able to do those things I had to talk my parents, you might feel very similarly about this. Like, I had to talk my mom into saying, like, hey, you paid taxes into this. So did I. So do I. We need to use this as a resource, right?
Yeah.
You have spent down everything else. You are not using the system. The
Mm.
system is there to support you,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And that's what it was designed for. So the people who need it, it's there.
Let's say you've just kind of entered this moment where something's happened with a parent. You kind of realize you need to get your shit in order.
Mhm.
Is there kind of like a first step and a second step for somebody who might have just entered into this moment?
Yeah, so the first step would be having the conversation with your loved one, and any other loved ones, like setting the stage. What is it that they desire to be able to have, and what do they want? And who do they want to be the ones that are doing the things?
Yeah. What are
And
their
then
wishes?
what are their wishes? And if they can answer those things, sometimes they can't answer those things. And then you have to really be working with the other individuals to set up who's doing what. Try not to take everything on yourself. Caregiver burnout is real.
Yep.
The other piece is really gathering, like be a be a detective. Like, what are the statements? Put together everything. There's lots of really great softwares out there that can help you with that, but so can a Google spreadsheet,
Hmm.
right?
We use a
Like,
Google spreadsheet to like put all
yep.
of our parents' expenses into.
Here's all the expenses,
Hmm.
here's how it's coming out, here are all the assets, here are all the payments that need to be made. Like, keep that stuff together as you find it, asking along the way, hey, mom, dad, what what was this for? Like, what did you set this up for? What was this? What are you using this for? Right? Not just like, what's this? Like, remember the human behind everything for
We
yourself and them.
I love that. And as a hot tip, what me and my sister have done, because we don't live in the same place and we were trying to
Yeah.
figure all this out. So we had like, I kind of talked about this before, but a committee. It's like me and my sister, and then my husband is kind of a financial person, and her husband's a lawyer, which I realize not everybody has resources like that. And sometimes it doesn't even feel like we really have access to their knowledge, but whatever. We put a spreadsheet together, and me and my sister both can get into their banking now. And when they had a house, it's like they have the lawn bill and I mean, there's so many bills. So it was like, just like you said, it was like slowly collecting all the things, getting them into one place. And then everybody knew, okay, this is what they have, this is what they owe, and like slowly taking care of some debts. So I do think just what you're saying, like you can just do it with a Google spreadsheet, but it does help to sort of make you more sane to get everything in one place because you would realize your parents don't necessarily do that.
They have
And
the
if this
notebook of
is
passwords.
hard,
Yeah.
because I will be very honest with you, right? Women are 90% of the time the caregivers, and society never taught women how to properly empower themselves around money. That was, a man's responsibility. And even in a feminist world where we're all like super empowered, I meet the most badass women and they still feel some sort of shame around money. So please don't hesitate to ask for help. The right professional is not going to shame you. The right professional is going to walk alongside that experience with you, and empower you to make the right decisions for your loved ones.
Isn't she amazing?
Amazing.
I know.
Is financially planning for end of life, does that include like burial,
Mhm.
cremation, funeral wishes, memorials,
Yeah,
heads,
yeah.
gravestones, things like that? Is that something that you talk through with your clients, or is that an
I
elder
mean, I
law
do,
attorney
I,
too?
I do because of me, like because
Yeah.
of the human that I am. It's not a responsibility that I have to my clients as their fiduciary, but yeah, I do. I ask my clients, like, what are your wishes? Like, have you done this type of planning? How are you talking about this with your kids? This is the hard part. Like, I share my personal story about planning 3 celebrations of life and not knowing what they want,
Yeah.
right?
I
Hmm.
have a friend who lost her father suddenly, and they were in a situation. So much of this is anecdotal, but it's
Hmm.
like they suddenly were like, it's X amount of money to pay for this funeral. And also, they had like shut down his accounts, weren't accessible because she didn't have power of attorney. So they needed to
Well, and power
access.
of attorney ceases upon death. So you have to be appointed as the personal representative for an estate.
Oh.
Oh,
So
So
she
the
could
power of
not.
attorney is only accessible
shit.
while
Shit.
living.
So then then it
Noted.
was like, we need to access these funds because they didn't have a plan in place for like what his wishes were. But you're going through so much emotion
Motion.
and discussing money while you're going through these emotional moments of like, I'm losing a parent slowly. My mom has dementia. My dad had a stroke. Cut
Yep.
to, but in the same breath, I need to figure out something financial for them. Like
Yep.
using both parts of your brain in that moment are,
Oh,
you
it's
can't
tricky.
explain
It's
it
hard.
unless you've been through it.
Yeah.
And all of this is what we hope, like we hope people can somehow get ahead of it. So in that moment, they can actually just be a human and be emotional. But we know that's just, not how life is all
I
the
think,
time.
though, even from just the beginning days of this podcast, with talking with you, Shannon, from talking with Rachel, I love this common theme that is coming up in treating each other like humans and putting the humanity first and the emotions first alongside all this. Because I don't even think 4 to 5 years ago, when I was embarking on this journey with my parents, that was anything that was talked about, that was even, it kind of felt like we had to get down to business. And while in our family, we really tried to stop and have some conversation. When you're taking care of all this stuff, it feels like just another checklist item. Like it's so hard that you're just trying to get through it. But to meet professionals that have empathy and taking the emotional care of their clients
Yeah.
as well, that was not our experience.
Yeah.
And
Sorry.
I just think that is so incredible that this exists, and this just this through line of like, let's take care of each other. I'm blown away. I just think it's the coolest thing ever. I think we're going to have you back soon.
Yeah.
Sounds wonderful. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. I'm happy to talk about it. Everyone on my team has experienced a caregiving journey.
Wow.
Every single person on my team.
Yeah.
So.
That's really special.
Well, we are so grateful. Thank you, Shannon.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and hopefully you can take away some helpful info and tips. All links and resources can be found in our show notes.
Please share this episode with anyone you think this might help. And if you have a topic that you'd like to talk more with us about in the sandwich generation world, please slide into our DMs on Instagram. Our handle is @thesandwichgenerationpod. We hope you'll be back for more convos with us soon. And remember, no matter whose diaper you're changing, you're never alone. That was great.
That was great. That was really good. All right. I am in love with Shannon. That was so good. She is amazing.
I know.
She is amazing.
I have some changes to make.
I know.
I gotta go to the bank after this.
When she said that the POA ceases at death, I was like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, hold on.
We
That's
need
not
to
what I
talk for
knew.
another hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh my God.
Okay. We are learning alongside
I need
everyone.
to go to the bank about the owner versus power of attorney at the
Yeah.
bank.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, people, we are literally learning right there with you.
Yeah.
And I just really appreciated how open you were with like what's happening in your family. Because, I remember the day I announced to my friends, like, well, this is what my parents have left in the bank. And that's what I'm dealing with today. Again, not brunch fodder, but, money is so intimate. And it is, I think you said something like this, but like it's one, the getting on the waiver, but like the financial piece of this, I think is what has almost broken me many a times because I already have triggers with money. And then it's like suddenly realizing my parents' care is literally hanging in the balance here.
Right.
Like we don't have
Right.
enough. Like how it's like how many months do we have left to be in assisted living? And that is real. That's
It's
real for
very
us
real.
every day. Like that's literally what I'm experiencing right now. And we actually had to ask a relative, so just to talk more personally about, I'm not going to share everything because I still want to honor some privacy, but we basically, me and the committee again, which is like me and my sister and my brother-in-law, my husband, it was like, okay, you guys, here's what they have in the bank. what are our avenues to money? Like, what do we do? Do we pursue medical assistance? These are our pathways to like, how do we financially survive this?
Yes.
And we're still very much in those talks. It's like, what's the lesser of two evils here? Is it better for them to receive money, but then are they not as eligible for the waiver?
Yeah.
So it's a constant weighing. And that's why I do think I'm one of those people that gets really intimidated by going to a financial planner or a lawyer. We still feel like it's going to be expensive. We shouldn't do it. But when we talk to these experts, it really is a reminder, like, there are people out there that have the answers, because I don't know about you, because you are an only. There's so much decision paralysis in all of this. You know, like, there's so many decisions to be made just around finances. So really, like, having someone like Shannon that you can talk to, who can actually just tell you on the spot rather than trying to Google the answers, or maybe this is true, maybe this isn't true, can tell you this is probably the best decision to make here. That saving of time and that shortcut and that sound of mind, I think is priceless.
Yeah. I have felt really empowered in the recording of this podcast, just meeting some of our guests and being like, oh, this is what it can be like to talk to a financial planner with my parents, specifically in this area. Like, Nick and I have a financial planner who I absolutely love. I adore the guy. He's so great. But my parents had their own financial planner. That was just a dud, to be honest.
Right.
I don't think he ever gave them the best advice over the years. I feel like, you know, my parents never made a ton of money, but the money that they made, they're very proud of. Again, they worked so freaking hard. My dad worked multiple jobs my entire life.
Yeah.
Like, it was very well earned. And I kind of always felt like, well, because he never made like the most money, that his financial planner was just like, oh, we're going to just put it in this thing and that's going to be your retirement. And even when we were liquidating his retirement, I remember stopping into the office and it was just like, yep, sign this form. That guy was getting ready to retire himself, and it just wasn't, it didn't feel personal. I'm sure that was very hard for my dad too, because he had to liquidate that maybe earlier than he thought. And I don't know, it's just like felt very disconnected. But that's all that my parents knew also. And they also thought that was enough and that was good, you know. So, and it wasn't bad, you know, what they had was amazing to have while we had it. Through these conversations, I'm like, oh man, like, I almost want to bring my parents to Shannon's practice,
Me too. I was
you know,
thinking
and
the
be
same
like,
thing. I was like, do you have an opening tomorrow at 3:00?
I know, like, I kind of want to, you know, I kind of want to go back and like redo some things and make sure we are actually buttoning everything up, because I have been figuring it out on my own, and I'm absolutely not perfect.
We haven't thought about the end of life costs. I mean,
they're expensive.
Yeah, I know. And I would like, you know, this podcast hopefully isn't giving us more anxiety about what we haven't done, but it is also like, these people make it seem approachable to like, okay, it's not too late. It's always better to go in. I also wanted to circle back to like, I loved when we opened up the conversation about, okay, how do we have the conversation with our parents? And I feel like I know many of you that are listening, and we all have parents, and like, my dad is not easy at all. And he was the one who had control of all the money. I know there are people out there where like your parents are absolutely not going to give you access, even though they should. There are people whose parents don't know much about their own finances. Like, there's so many situations, or like one parent is hiding it from the other parent, or, you know, there's so many layers to like talking to your parents about money. And I loved how I have to remind myself of this, and it does really help. When things are getting hostile, or like my dad's having anxiety about it, it's like, he is a human. He has lost a lot of control and independence in his life, and money is a huge part of that. And if I'm going to get anywhere with him, I have to like approach it that way. And I have to remember that if I can slow down and just remember that he wants to feel in control of something, does really help. So I just thought those were really helpful tips that I have to keep reminding myself of.
They're really helpful. I was pretty lucky in that my parents were pretty open with me about their finances. I think any conversation about aging, end of life, what's next, like the moving conversation was very, very tricky for
yeah.
us. And it took a long time. I mean, I think it took a couple of years for, my dad to really be on board, because my mom was kind of wanting to move before him. And I feel lucky that we did approach and kind of ease into those conversations along the way, and that they were as open as they were with me, because at a certain point we had to be, to get them the best care that we could. So, yeah.
Yeah. And my dad was like ready to surrender, actually, but I was actually just reflecting on this. And I don't know, maybe some of you can relate to this, but the way it unfolded for us was my dad had a stroke. I had tried to convince my parents to do a lot of these things before these things happened, and they wouldn't listen and they wouldn't do it. So they did have a will, but that was about it. And I tried to get them to sell their house ahead of the time, but they just, it was like, we're living our lives. And they had their own plan. They didn't want to hear from me. In my case, my dad, he had a huge debilitating stroke overnight, and then a rehab process of like 6 to 8 months. And in that time is when I slowly started to realize, oh, there are bills, there are taxes that need to be paid, there are like, debts, and, it's going to be a year passing. I need to get access to these things, and I don't have any access. And my mom was so stressed, and she didn't really know as much as my dad. So my dad was like paralyzed on one side and trying to rehab. And I'm trying to not ask him too many questions about his finances, because that's probably what gave him a stroke in the first place. Right?
Yeah.
So I just think, you never know how it's going to come to you or unfold. And we should only be so lucky if we can get ahead of it. This shit is real,
It's very real.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And we all have just a little something in terms of our relationship with money, right? Like we all have our bugaboos a little bit. Even when you have a lot of money, I'm sure you have, feelings around it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I think that normalizing the conversation is just so important. Maybe that's an area that we can all step into, and be open with our money, and maybe, create a better future for ourselves, if anything.
Mm-hmm. We hope this helped you guys to feel less alone if you're dealing with this. And now you know a lot more about us too.
Yeah.
You know all of our secrets.
More to come though.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.